The rain hammered against the diner's windows like bullets, each drop carrying the weight of desperation that seemed to follow Marcus everywhere these days. His 7-year-old daughter Emma pressed her small face against the glass, watching a young waitress outside struggling to load heavy boxes into a broken-down car that refused to start. The woman's uniform was soaked, her shoulders shaking not just from the cold, but from something deeper, a kind of exhaustion Marcus recognized all too well. "Daddy," Emma whispered, tugging at his sleeve, "I want to help her." Those 6 words would change everything. Marcus looked at his daughter, then back at the stranger in the rain, and felt something stir in his chest that had been dormant for 3 years, since the day his wife Sarah had lost her battle with cancer, leaving him to raise Emma alone on a construction worker's salary that barely covered rent, let alone the mountain of medical bills that still haunted his mailbox. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Trillionaire in Love for more inspiring tales that remind us why kindness matters. Your support means the world to us. Let's build this community together. Marcus had built walls around his heart, thick ones made of necessity and survival. Every day was a calculated risk. Should he take the overtime shift and leave Emma with Mrs. Rodriguez next door, or should he pick her up early from school and lose those precious extra dollars? Should he fix the leaking faucet, or buy Emma new shoes for the winter? Life had become a series of impossible choices, each one carved from the reality that there was never enough time, never enough money, never enough of him to go around. But Emma had inherited something from her mother that Marcus had almost forgotten existed, an unshakable belief in the goodness of people and the power of reaching out when someone was drowning. "We can't help everyone, sweetheart," Marcus said gently, the words tasting bitter in his mouth because he knew they were true. He'd learned that lesson the hard way when Sarah got sick, when friends disappeared one by one because cancer was contagious in ways that had nothing to do with medicine, when the bills piled up faster than his ability to pay them, when hope became a luxury he couldn't afford. "But we can help her," Emma insisted, pressing her hand against the window. "Look, Daddy, she's crying." Marcus looked closer. Through the streaks of rain, he could see the waitress had stopped trying to start her car. Her head was buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her soul. The boxes around her were getting soaked, their contents probably ruined. She looked exactly like Marcus had felt so many nights after Sarah's funeral, completely alone and utterly defeated. The waitress's name was Sophia, though Marcus wouldn't learn that until later. What he saw in that moment was a 24-year-old woman who worked 3 jobs to support her sick mother and younger brother, whose car had chosen this particular rainy Thursday to finally give up, whose last paycheck had gone to her mother's medication instead of the car repair she desperately needed. She was living the same impossible mathematics that governed Marcus's life, where every solution created 2 new problems. 5 minutes, Marcus found himself saying, reaching for his jacket. "We'll help for 5 minutes, then we go home." Emma's face lit up like sunrise, and for a moment Marcus saw Sarah in her smile, the same uncompromising faith in the possibility of good things happening to good people. They ran through the rain together, Emma's small hand clutched in his, and when Sophia looked up with startled, red-rimmed eyes, Marcus saw something that made his chest tight. She had the same expression Sarah used to get when the medical bills arrived, that particular kind of desperation that comes from fighting a battle you know you can't win but can't afford to lose. "Car trouble?" Marcus asked, rain already soaking through his jacket. Sophia nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "It won't start, and all my groceries for my mom are getting ruined. I don't know what to do anymore." Emma stepped forward before Marcus could stop her. "My daddy's really good at fixing things. He fixed our toaster and our door and even my doll when her arm came off." Marcus found himself looking under the hood of Sophia's ancient Honda, his hands moving automatically through troubleshooting routines he'd learned over years of fixing everything because paying someone else was never an option. The battery terminals were corroded, The alternator belt was loose, and from the sound she described, the starter was probably going bad. It was the kind of repair that would cost more than Sophia probably made in a week. "I can get it running," he said slowly, "but it's going to need work, real work." Sophia's face crumpled. "I can't afford." "I didn't ask if you could afford it," Marcus interrupted, surprising himself. "I asked if you wanted it fixed." That was the moment everything changed, not because of some grand gesture or sudden realization, but because of the quiet decision to step into someone else's struggle without calculating the cost first. Marcus spent his Saturday in Sophia's driveway, Emma handing him tools and chattering with Sophia about everything from favorite colors to the bedtime stories her daddy made up. He spent money he didn't have on parts from the auto store, money that was supposed to go toward Emma's winter coat. But as he worked, something unexpected happened. Sophia brought them lunch, sand, which is made from ingredients that were probably meant for her family's dinner. Emma taught Sophia the card game Sarah had invented during her long hospital stays. They talked about everything and nothing. Three people who had learned too young that life was hard, but had somehow managed to hold onto the belief that it was still worth living. The challenges came fast and relentless. Marcus's boss wasn't happy about him missing overtime for charity work. The auto parts store called about his bounced check. Emma's school sent home a notice about the unpaid lunch fees. Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned that Emma had been asking her what eviction notice meant. Apparently she'd seen one tucked under some bills on the kitchen counter. Marcus lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, adding and subtracting numbers that never seemed to work out right. Helping Sophia had cost him $200 he didn't have, and a day of work he desperately needed. The rational part of his brain screamed that he'd made a terrible mistake, that he had his own daughter to think about, that Sophia's problems weren't his responsibility. But then Emma crawled into bed beside him, the way she used to when the nightmares about Mommy first started. "Daddy," she whispered in the dark, "Sophia's car is working now, right?" "Yes, sweetheart, it's working." "Good. Her little brother needs her to bring him medicine, just like how I need you." Marcus felt something break open in his chest, not breaking apart, but breaking open, like a seed that had been waiting underground for the right conditions to grow. Emma was right. Sophia's brother needed her the same way Emma needed him. They were all just people trying to take care of the people they loved, doing the best they could with what they had. The next morning brought an unexpected knock on the door. Sophia stood there with tears in her eyes and an envelope in her hands. "I can't take charity," she said, trying to hand him money. "My mama didn't raise me to take handouts." "Good," Marcus said, not taking the envelope. "Because I didn't give you charity, I gave you help. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" Emma appeared beside Marcus, still in her pajamas. "Charity is when someone feels sorry for you. Help is when someone sees you're strong enough to keep going. You just need someone to carry some of the weight for a little while." Marcus stared down at his daughter, wondering when she'd gotten so wise. Sophia was crying again, but this time it was different. The kind of tears that come when someone reminds you that you're not alone in the world. The real surprise came 2 weeks later. Sophia had been asking around about Marcus at the diner, and it turned out one of her regular customers owned a small construction company. He'd been looking for someone reliable, someone with experience and good character. Sophia had recommended Marcus without even knowing if he was looking for a new job. The interview led to a position with better pay, health insurance, and reasonable hours that didn't require him to choose between Emma and earning enough to support her. It wasn't a miracle. Marcus still worked hard for every dollar, still worried about making ends meet, still faced the daily challenges of single parenthood. But the impossible mathematics of his life suddenly had a few more variables that actually worked in his favor. More importantly, Emma had found something she'd been missing since her mother died. A broader sense of family that included Sophia and her family, Mrs. Rodriguez, and the growing circle of people who looked out for each other not because they had to, but because they chose to. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same diner where it all began. watching Emma and Sophia's little brother, Miguel, share a piece of pie while Sophia finished her shift. The rain was falling again, but this time it felt different, cleaner somehow, like it was washing the world fresh for new possibilities. "You know," Sophia said, sliding into the booth beside him, "Miguel keeps asking when Emma's going to be his sister." Marcus felt his cheeks warm. What had started as helping a stranger had grown into something he hadn't dared hope for, the possibility of love again, not as a replacement for what he'd lost with Sarah, but as something new and different and beautiful in its own way. "Emma keeps asking the same thing," he admitted. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children plan elaborate adventures with the confidence of kids who knew they were loved and protected. Marcus thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, so focused on protecting what little he had that he'd almost forgotten how much more there was to gain by opening his hands instead of keeping them closed. The challenges hadn't disappeared. Sophia still worked too hard for too little money. Marcus still worried about Emma growing up too fast. Miguel still needed expensive treatments for his asthma. Mrs. Rodriguez was getting older and needed more help with her own daily tasks. But somehow, facing these challenges together made them feel less like insurmountable walls and more like hills they could climb if they helped each other. "Daddy," Emma said, sliding out of the booth to hug him, "remember when I said I wanted to help her? I remember. I think she helped us too." Marcus looked around at this unlikely family they'd built, not through blood or marriage or traditional means, but through the simple decision to show up for each other when it mattered. Emma was right. Sophia had helped them too, in ways that had nothing to do with money or practical assistance. She'd reminded them that they deserved good things, that love wasn't a finite resource that diminished when shared, that taking care of others was actually another way of taking care of yourself. As they prepared to leave that night, Emma tugged on Sophia's apron. "Will you come over tomorrow? Daddy's making his famous pancakes, and Miguel can meet Mr. Whiskers." Mr. Whiskers was the cat they'd adopted the week before. Another mouth to feed that Marcus couldn't afford, but somehow couldn't say no to, when Emma had found him shivering behind the dumpster at school. "I'll be there," Sophia promised, ruffling Emma's hair. Walking home through the gentle rain, Emma's hand in his, and the promise of tomorrow's pancakes warming his thoughts, Marcus realized that the most important lesson hadn't come from anything he'd taught his daughter. It had come from what she'd taught him, that helping others wasn't about having enough left over after you've taken care of yourself. It was about understanding that taking care of others was part of taking care of yourself, that we're all connected in ways that make everyone's struggle everyone's responsibility, everyone's joy everyone's celebration. The story could have ended there, with a neat resolution of problems solved and love found. But real life isn't that tidy, and the most important part of their story was just beginning, because Marcus had learned that opening your heart doesn't eliminate risk, it transforms it. Instead of risking everything to protect what little you have, you risk everything to create something bigger and better and more beautiful than anything you could build alone. 3 months later, when Sophia's mother needed emergency surgery they couldn't afford, Marcus didn't hesitate to take out a loan against his car. When Marcus got laid off during a slow season, Sophia picked up extra shifts without being asked. When Emma came down with pneumonia, Miguel spent every afternoon reading to her while Sophia and Marcus took turns at her bedside. They had become each other's safety net, each other's emergency fund, each other's reason to keep fighting. The final challenge came in the form of an opportunity that seemed too good to be true. Marcus was offered a job in another state, better pay, better benefits, the kind of security he'd always dreamed of providing for Emma. But taking it would mean leaving Sophia, leaving the community they'd built, leaving behind the people who had become family. Emma, now 8 and wise beyond her years, sat on his lap while he struggled with the decision. "Are you scared, Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm scared of making the wrong choice. Mommy used to say that the right choice is usually the one that feels scary but also feels like love." Marcus held his daughter close and realized she was right. The job offer felt like security, but staying felt like love. messy, complicated, risky love that had already proven itself stronger than any safety net money could buy. He turned down the job. 6 months later, Sophia's customer connections helped him start his own small handyman business. It wasn't the corporate security of the other job, but it was something better, the freedom to build something with his own hands while staying close to the people who mattered most. On Emma's 9th birthday, as he watched her blow out candles surrounded by Sophia, Miguel, Mrs. Rodriguez, and a dozen other people who had become family through choice rather than blood, Marcus thought about the man he used to be, the one who measured everything in terms of cost and risk, who built walls instead of bridges, who forgot that the best way to protect what you love is to love more, not less. Emma's wish that night, whispered just loud enough for him to hear, was that everyone could find their Sophias, someone to help and someone to be helped by, someone to remind them that they're not alone in this world. As the party wound down and they cleaned up together, Marcus realized that Emma's wish had already come true. Everyone at that table had found their Sophia in one way or another. They had all learned what his daughter had tried to teach him that rainy night in the diner, that the magic happens not when you have enough to spare, but when you decide that caring for others is not a luxury you can afford only after your own needs are met, but a necessity that makes meeting your own needs possible. The story ends where it began, with rain on the window and the opportunity to help a stranger. But this time, when Emma pointed to someone who needed help, Marcus didn't hesitate. He didn't calculate the cost or worry about the consequences. He simply reached for his jacket and said, "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go see what we can do," because he had finally learned the most important lesson of all, that risking everything for love isn't really a risk at all. It's the only way to live. This story reminds us that sometimes the greatest courage isn't protecting what we have, it's opening our hearts to what we might gain. If this touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to Trillion Air in Love for more stories that celebrate the extraordinary power of ordinary kindness. Your comments mean everything to us. Tell us about a time when helping someone changed your life too. Together, we can remind the world that love multiplies when it's shared. Thank you for being part of this community.